Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alistair Stewart. I'm a QSA here at IT Governance, and I'm going to be taking you through this webinar on Cyber Essentials in relation to the Cyber Resilience Strategy for Scotland and the rest of the UK. Feel free to, if you think of questions as we go along, put them in the questions function of the GoToWebinar panel, and I'll do my best to answer whatever questions you may have at the end. As much as possible, but do feel free to put questions up in there as we go along as you think of them, and I should be able to track them and get to them when we get to a bit of a Q&A session. As for today's webinar, we're going to look at obviously Cyber Essentials in relation to the new Scottish Cyber Security Strategy. I myself have been working with ITG for about 4.5 years now, both on the PCI DSS side, which is payment card industries, and on Cyber Essentials since the beginning of it. So we've been working, ITG has been involved with Cyber Essentials since the very beginning of the Cyber Essentials program. I've been a certification body since the very beginning as well. So we've been working on this for a number of years now, and this new cyber resilience strategy from the Scottish Government has come out, which lines up significantly with the Cyber Essentials. In terms of what cyber IT governance offer, it is pretty much everything when it comes down to cybersecurity, PCI DSS, governance, risk management, cyber resilience. We are a Cyber Essentials certification body as well. We offer full certification, including the testing and penetration testing and scanning requirements as well. So we can help you with everything. Today's discussion, we're obviously going to briefly cover off Cyber Essentials scheme and what it is, and how it relates to the new Scottish Cyber Resilience Strategy, and the process of certification, and some key benefits of the scheme itself over the course of the next half hour or so. We'll also then look at what we can offer you directly in relation to Cyber Essentials and the Scottish Cyber Resilience Strategy. So what is Cyber Essentials? As stated here, it is a assurance mechanism for companies to help demonstrate that they have at least the basics of cybersecurity in place. It was designed to be size agnostic. Right from the start, it was not built just for SMEs, as is commonly believed. It can help large companies secure supply chains. It's cost effective for suppliers to undergo. It can filter down through supply chains very easily. And it covers only 5 key control areas. So it is really about the basics of cybersecurity, which the UK government, when they created it, found a lot of the attacks that the companies were dealing with showed that the majority of these attacks could be prevented by very basic cyber security controls. Most of the attacks, about 80% of the attacks, don't employ significantly sophisticated techniques. They're all done with very simplistic techniques, and therefore could be prevented with very simple controls. And so they, after a bit of research, came up with the 5 key control areas under Cyber Essentials. And they created 2 levels of certification, which are both seen here on the left, Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. In terms of the standard, there's no difference to the organization. What changes between the Essentials level and the Plus level is the level of verification that the certification body does on your cybersecurity stance. So at the Cyber Essentials level, there is less robustness of the check in what controls are implemented. In both cases, all controls must be implemented by the organization. It's just a question of how deep the testing goes on those controls. The 5 key control areas that were selected when they created the standard were secure configuration. So these were selected from a bunch of reports done by the government, along with things like the 10 steps to cybersecurity and how things are not being applied. So they looked at secure configuration, are you configuring the devices securely? They looked at boundary firewalls and internet gateways, the actual entry and exit points to your organization. They looked at access control mechanisms and making sure that you've got access control in place in terms of making sure the right people can access the right information and not information they shouldn't. They also looked at patch management as being an area where most businesses are not up to scratch of basic patching of critical security risks. and of malware protection. It sounds obvious that you should have anti-malware software, but a lot of businesses were not, or not having effective anti-malware or suitable anti-malware. In terms of our experience, the areas we see the most problems with in Cyber Essentials is the patch management and secure configuration. The other controls people are fairly aware of having anti-malware and having firewalls configured correctly and access controls, but patching is something where a lot of businesses fall down, and also securely configuring the devices in the first place is also often an area of concern for businesses, typically in our experience. So the Scottish cybersecurity and resilience strategies that have been recently created was basically developed as part of the whole UK government's cybersecurity strategy, which Cyber Essentials is also part of. It was developed as a public sector action plan, along with the National Cyber Resilience Leaders Board in Scotland. The Cyber Essentials scheme is required to work with the UK government directly. So if you're working with the UK government, you need to have Cyber Essentials. And in cases of MOD or defence protection, you end up having to mandatorily do Cyber Essentials Plus for all these contracts. So as the Scottish Cyber Resilience Strategy, as part of the UK government, is adopting the similar principles of Cyber Essentials, but going a little bit further. The Resilience Strategy goes beyond just the Cyber Essentials. There are 11 key actions within the cyber resilience strategy, only 2 of which we're going to focus on the webinar today because we have limited time, and 2 of them also relate directly to Cyber Essentials. We do have a downloadable green paper on our website that summarizes the entire cyber resilience strategy and the public action plan that goes along with it. We'll provide the link at the end of the webinar to download and have a look at it. We also have links on our website to the actual Cyber Essentials scheme requirements as well, which is UK government. So the other thing to bear in mind is that Cyber Essentials is actually an annual renewal process. It is recommended to renew it annually, and again, if you're working at a higher level of security to do with MOT and defence cyber, it's a requirement that you renew it annually rather than being recommended. So the 2 actions we're going to concentrate on over the course of the next webinar is actions 4 and 11. Those are the ones that have important deadlines and directly relate to Cyber Essentials certification, which you can start doing literally right now in order to get compliant. And there are some important deadlines surrounding these 2 particular actions as well. So key action 4 is to do with the Scottish Government supporting public bodies to make sure they have the appropriate assurance and critical technical controls in place by the end of October 2018 is when they want companies to get compliant by. In order to do this, they've made some funding available. I don't know exactly how much. I think it's something in the region of 6 figures. The actual green paper we've got publishes exactly how much is available. But there is some funding available for public bodies to undergo what they're going to be calling a pre-assessment, which in IT governance terms we would call a gap analysis. In other words, looking at making sure that Cyber Essentials is viable for your business and how best to implement it in terms of perhaps scope reduction or what needs to be done in order to make sure that the most appropriate controls are in place in the most appropriate way. And the deadline for getting that funding is actually the end of March. So you don't have long to get in and try and get the funding if you're a public body looking for this pre-assessment. It needs to be fairly quick. So the end of March is when you must undergo the Cyber Essentials pre-assessment. Obviously, there are limits to the funding. The details are further in the scheme and in our green paper. Then they have a deadline of the end of April for the board or senior management to take a decision on whether to pursue Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus, depending on what is more suitable for your organization. So you then have another month to take a decision on which level you're going to be certified to. And then you need to achieve certification by the end of October 2018. Now, all of this it sounds a bit quick time frame, but in our experience, it's perfectly possible to turn around a Cyber Essentials certification in this time frame or even shorter in some cases. Obviously, it depends entirely on your individual environment, and it depends entirely on the individual setups and what changes may or may not need to be made. But in general, this is not, we don't consider this an unachievable time frame for a lot of businesses. So although it seems tight, it isn't as tight as it seems once you delve into the standard and looking at scoping this pre-assessment. Key action 11, which is the next one we need to look at, is the Scottish Government wants to monitor monitor an evaluation framework to help assess their progress. So they want to make sure that their businesses are making progress towards cyber essentials and towards the overall cyber resilience strategy. So they want to make sure that the framework they're going to put out, people are actually making progress towards. This then has a number of other deadlines associated with it. So at the end of June, businesses need to provide written assurance at the board level that you've either undergone a pre-essentials, you've taken a decision on whether to do normal or plus level, and the expected timeline for achieving that. They do accept that some businesses will not be able to achieve certification by the end of October, but they want you to provide a timeline on when you will be able to do that. And that means you do it in a written form to the Scottish Government directly. It is our recommendation that you get started now on the plan, because you only have to the end of the month to make sure you can get the funding for the pre-assessment. Then you've only got till the end of next month, April, to take a decision on this and plan to actually get certified. We do have already built support packages that can take you through. So there are a number of packages that we're going to just look at on the next slide that can help take you through certification in these kinds of timeframes, and we can work with you the whole way to doing this. So obviously, end of October, you'll then need to confirm that certification has been achieved, or in exceptional cases, that there is some kind of alternative assurance if you can't do it, or you will get certified if you can't make it by the end of October. But they want written assurance or written confirmation as much as possible that you have made it by the end of October, so that they can monitor the progress of all the public sector towards their cyber resilience strategy and the framework that they're putting in place. So I mentioned we have a number of solutions and packages that can help you straight away. So I want to take you over some of them. The first of which is called Do It Yourself. It is essentially a full Do It Yourself package. We manage our cyber essential certifications through all entirely through an online web portal, where you submit your assessments, where the assessors will look at your certifications, where we run the vulnerability scans from, where everything is collated and managed centrally through a single portal for your business, which you can add and remove users to and fully manage, and you can get direct conversation lines and chats with even your assessors and testers directly through there, both in email and in instant messaging format. So we have direct access, and everything is managed centrally in a single place, which makes the process much smoother and easier. The do-it-yourself package is simply everything you need to get certified. So if you are looking to renew and your scope hasn't changed, or you're confident in defining the scope and you know exactly what's going on, then this is pretty much just a package for you. You log into the portal, you define your scope, it gets reviewed, you submit your assessment, you create scans, you organize the on-site testing if that's required, and everything happens automatically. It's obviously the most efficient and cheapest option. We then also have something called Get a Little Help, which offers the same as the actual do-it-yourself package, but also offers 2 hours of live online consultancy with myself or one of the other consultants or one of the assessors on the team to help talk you through completing the portal, or talk you through defining the scope, or give you some advice on how to produce the scope. And it includes a documentation toolkit, which includes a bunch of policies and procedures that you can put in place to help make sure you can get to a stage where you're ready to be certified, and you can maintain that status for your annual recertifications. We also then have the next package, which is Get a Lot of Help, which swaps the 2 hours of live online for a full day's worth of on-site consultancy. One of our consultants who will come to your site and spend the day going through your current scope, working out the best ways of you reducing or limiting your scope, working out what requirements you meet and what ones you don't, and giving you clear advice and guidance on what you need to do to get to a stage where you can be assessed, and run you through the assessment process. In the get a lot of help option, you'll also receive a report afterwards that satisfies the cyber resilience strategy requirements for the pre-assessment. So because the pre-assessment should include a report that you can then submit to the Scottish Government so that you know where you're going, the Get a Lot of Help on-site consultancy, we will help you produce that so that you can then make sure you can present that to the Scottish Government as having done your pre-assessment. So that's how we can help across all of the different packages and all the different options we've got. So yes, this includes the report that satisfies the pre-assessment requirements outlined in key action 4, as I said. What's the certification process? So the first step we take with cyber essentials is defining the scope that IT are going to assess, and the scope has to be agreed between yourselves and the assessors, and that's done primarily through the portal, but obviously if you've got a consultant working with you, they'll work with you to define the scope accurately. Otherwise, it's submitted through the portal and submitted for acceptance by our assessors. You then complete a self-assessment questionnaire on the portal, so there is around about 50 to 55 questions that you need to answer on the questionnaire about the various security controls that you have in place. You'll then have an external vulnerability scan on any external IPs that are in scope, which will be run automatically, again, through our Cyber Essentials portal. If you're at the plus level, you'll then need to have an on-site assessment. So one of our testers will come to site and run the on-site vulnerability scanning and testing of the systems as well. And assuming all that passes, you will then end up as certified either at Essentials level or plus level. We can scope the assessment to be either the whole organization or a business unit or a network. We can advise you on how best to segment where the whole organization is not appropriate to be certified in some cases, or where you don't want to certify certain sub-companies within your group, perhaps. If that's the organizational structure, you may only want to certify one part of the group. It's certainly possible. The questionnaire itself has got, I said 50 to 55, that's pretty good. 52 questions exactly across the 5 controls. You need to pass each of the 5 control sections. It doesn't mean you need to answer every question as 100% positive. The pass mark is not 100%, but you do need to pass each section. The scan itself is a full IP scan. For those of you who are into the vulnerability scanning and know what it means, it is essentially a full port scan across TCP ports and UDP ports to make sure there is no known vulnerabilities visible externally. It does do a little bit of basic web application scanning for any of the web apps that are on those IPs as well. The on-site test will then test the security and build of configuration standards of each device in scope, so of the laptops and desktops and other devices that are internally accessible. So the on-site test will then test those. It also checks patching levels. Do we make sure that you're patching the systems up to date? Make sure that your antivirus or anti-malware is functioning correctly as well, and that it is actually picking up viruses. So there's a number of tests that are run on site. All of these are included in any of the relevant packages. So at a bare minimum, with any of the packages, you get scope, obviously assessed, the questionnaire, the scanning, and if required, the on-site testing is all included in the packages. What changes is the amount of extra assistance you get from our consultancy and our consultancy team to help you get there. Some of the other benefits of Cyber Essentials that are not just limited to benefits of taking us, benefits of actually doing Cyber Essentials, not just because the Scottish Cyber Resilience Strategy requires it, but for your own benefit, is obviously protection against the bulk of basic common cyber attacks. You can demonstrate a secure supply chain to any of your up-chain suppliers that the down chain is secure where possible. It can certainly help you become more efficient in terms of dealing with security issues. There is an increased chance, obviously, of being able to win government contracts. Like I said, for most UK government contracts, it's now a requirement to be at least Cyber Essentials, if not plus level certified in some cases. If you're working in MOD or with cyber defense cyber, you're going to need it, and you certainly can't achieve those contracts unless you do. And also there's potential, if you are a business that uses cyber insurance, as a lot of the people do these now, it certainly can reduce your cyber insurance premium. So there's an awful lot of benefits to doing Cyber Essentials, other than just because the Scottish Government is requiring it as part of their new framework. Why us? And I'm assuming many of you have a reason why us, hence why you're attending the webinar, but just to make sure some of the benefits we can offer you is obviously This Cyber Essentials portal I've mentioned, we conduct the entire process through there. You will book your scans, you will book your on-site testing, you will answer your questions, you will have conversations with your assessors. Everything is centrally controlled and managed inside one single web portal for yourself. And you are free to create and add users inside your organization, so different people in your organization can log in and view the different answers and help answer the questions and help work on it together. So it's all centrally managed through there. We are CREST accredited certification body, which means we're able to provide the tools and everything that's needed to achieve both Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus level. The testers are all in-house, so the technical tests are conducted by our testers in-house. We don't outsource any part of the certification process to any third parties. Everything is done with our pen testers and our assessors. And I can tell you, being one of the Cyber Essentials consultants, that we work on the same team directly with the assessors and directly with the testers to make sure that everybody involved with the client knows exactly what's going on and the best way of getting that client to the certification they require. You'll obviously benefit from the added level of the CREST verification. CREST do verify us on an annual basis to make sure our testers meet their standards. So you're getting the fact that your testing is externally verified. Package solutions are a very, very easy and simple way to just click and buy and say, I want to get certified, this is going to get me there, and it's a fixed price. You know what you're paying, you know what you're getting. And obviously, having led ISO and ISO certifications, and there's hundreds, if not thousands necessarily, of ISO implementations, as well as hundreds of PCI certifications, we do have a strong presence, we have a strong knowledge and a strong background in auditing, in certification, and in security and governance in general. So, next steps. I did say we provide a link to the green paper that is there on screen. As you can see, the link there. Obviously, our website and contact details are all there. There's a link directly to the one-stop solutions for Cyber Essentials certification, the packages as well, if you wish to take them. Let's have a quick look. I think we've had some questions come in. We have. So what I'm going to do is just get access to the questions. So somebody's asking, is the funding only available to public sector organisations in Scotland? I believe so at the moment. I don't know whether there's any further caveats on it. The actual cyber resilience strategy itself does state, they go into quite a bit of detail. As far as I'm aware, it is only for public sector at the moment. I could be wrong, as far as I know. Although having said that, the cost of Cyber Essentials is suitably small. When the UK government created it, they created it specifically to make sure that all organisations could afford it. It's not for SMEs, but it's designed to be accessible for SMEs as well as big organisations. So one of the key things that the government wanted to make sure was Cyber Essentials was not prohibitively expensive, which is why they have the Cyber Essentials level and the Plus level, because the Essentials level is a much, much cheaper test because we don't have to send somebody to site. There's no expenses in traveling and all that kind of stuff involved. It could all be done remotely via a web portal. And so the costs come down significantly when you look at normal Cyber Essentials compared to Cyber Essentials Plus. And so funding shouldn't necessarily be a barrier to Cyber Essentials certification, certainly not in our experience. That's another reason why we built the Cyber Comply portal, because initially it was a manual process of emailing questionnaires one way and the client would fill out and email them back. We'd then go back to them and say, actually, this isn't right, this isn't wrong. So it was a back and forth email process, which was very lengthy and would have cost significant money. So we immediately built the Cyber Comply portal to allow us to manage all that centrally and allow us to automate the vulnerability scanning and that kind of stuff, which drastically keeps our costs down, which allows us to reduce the cost for you guys. We have been known as one of the consistently cheapest suppliers for Cyber Essentials certifications because we can manage it so efficiently. The scans, for example, because they're fully automated, you choose the exact date and time that scans happen. So you can scan out of hours, you can scan at midnight on a Saturday if you want to make sure you don't interrupt business. Scans will happen automatically. Results come back to our assessors. They log in next time they're looking at it, look at the results and release them if they're fine. And if they're not, they come back to you and explain why the results have failed. So if anything comes back on the portal as rejected, the assessors and the testers will always provide reasons as to why it was rejected on the portal, so you can see and hopefully make the changes. Somebody says, so how much is it then? The price of Cyber Essentials, I don't know them. I'm not in sales off the top of my head. The link there will take you straight to the prepackaged prices. They don't change. Off the top of my head, Cyber Essentials at do-it-yourself level is a 3-figure price, I think. That kind of level you're looking at for the very base level. Somebody's asked, how does Cyber Essentials work for a company with a bring your own device policy? It can and does work on that. It's a little harder to implement. You have to be a little bit tighter on controls, but we certainly have done Cyber Essentials certification at normal and at plus level on companies with a BYOD policy. You need to have some kind of management systems in place to be able to actually manage and enforce various policies onto those BYOD bring your own devices, but it certainly can be done. The scope and the standard does make mention of that and does make allowances for BYOD. Somebody's mentioned, do you have to pay for a retest if the initial scan fails? Yes, you do, but scans can be bought in packages separately from the actual full certification package. So if you buy a Cyber Essentials DIY and the scan fails, you can simply buy another scan rather than a full package, which obviously keeps the costs significantly down. If you're taking one of our packages with the Live Online or the on-site consultancy, then the consultant should very easily be able to determine initially whether you'll pass or scan and pass or fail, and make sure that you don't launch the scan until you've made the changes that will mean it's compliant. We package up our scans because they're automated into a rescan being just that you have to pay for. Okay, so I don't see any other questions. Obviously, we have the green paper. I believe we'll be putting out a blog post in response to this webinar shortly with some of the details in it. So if you've got further questions, or obviously you can give us a call, give us an email or a contact, etc., to speak to one of the sales team or the consultants or the account managers here for any other questions you need in terms of helping you get the Cyber Essentials certification in place. Otherwise, thank you very much for attending and thank you for listening.